Hey everyone, today I'm coming at you with a game between Houdini and Leela ChessZero in the TCEC Season 15 Champions Bonus matches. Here Leela is black, Houdini is white. I'll play through the first 10 moves very quickly because these are all book moves. So these were d4, knight to f6, c4, g6. And the book move was knight c3, bishop g7 and e4. We get into a King's Indian with d6, white plays f3, castles, bishop e3 and e5 from black, d5 and now knight to h5, queen d2 and f5 from black, e takes f5, g takes f5 and white castles queenside and knight d7 from black. And these are all the book moves. Now to analyse one of these games I fired up the old Stockfish 10 just to see what was going on, otherwise it's impossible to analyse these games quite frankly. And here it gives white a slightly better with a plus score of 1.39, which is very interesting. So I'm going to actually ruin this for you. Leela wins this game. So it's amazing how she can turn this around so quickly. In the game, Houdini plays king to b1 here, and knight c5 from Leela. Knight b6 here was an option, but I think knight c5 obviously is stronger. Bishop takes c5 is played by Houdini, and d takes c5 from black. So black's got doubled c-pawns at the expense of winning a bishop over the knight. And you'll see how strong Leela's bishops become very soon. Knight h3 from white, manoeuvring probably to knight to f2, rook g1, maybe g4 at some point. And Leela just shuts up shop with queen d6, developing a piece. And knight to f2 now from Houdini. Leela now preempts white's attack, so she plays king h8 and Houdini plays rook g1. Here Leela plays knight to f4 and g3 by Houdini to attack this knight, and it retreats to g6, where it will possibly manoeuvre to e5 if this e4 pawn ever moves up the board. And Houdini now continues their attack with h4, preparing h5. So Leela's got two options here. They can push the e pawn and the f pawn. If we push the f pawn, then I think black just becomes overwhelmed. Knight fe4 attacking the queen, and if bishop f5 to pin the knight, just h5 comes. After knight to e7, Houdini could play g4, and black's forced to take off this knight. After knight takes e6, the queen's attacked again, and this c5 pawn is. Queen a6, and white could opt to play knight takes c5, but bishop d3 is actually far stronger, preparing h6, g5 and knight takes c5 at any point. So in this position Leela opted to play e4 here, releasing this g7 bishop. So she sacrifices a pawn to unleash this bishop, and also release the c8 bishop at the same time, as you'll see. If f takes e4 here, again we get into this similar position that we had before where knight can capture on e4, and the queen on d6 and the pawn on c5 look very bad. After bishop f5 again pinning the knight, bishop h3 threatening the bishop, so it's forced to take on e4. After knight takes e4, queen b6, just rook g2, and actually white has a very clear advantage here. Just because white's a pawn up and the g and h pawn are going to start rolling up the board, and that c5 pawn is incredibly weak. So in this position Leela now plays knight to e5, guessing their own attack in. So knight to f3 is now a big threat. So Houdini develops piece and plays bishop to e2, defending f3. And Leela now develops her last piece with bishop to d7. So this is quite interesting. It's always important to develop your pieces, and the computers are testament to that. I was wondering what would happen if e takes f5 here, because black sort of wasted a move developing on d7. But in actual fact bishop takes f5 is very strong. After king a1, bishop h6, black's got these two bishops raking down the board. It's still an even game, but it's quite nice for black to equalise here. In the game after bishop d7, knight to b5 was played, attacking the queen. So obviously I looked at bishop takes b5 here, where black gives back the bishop, but it actually leads to a better position for white. After c takes b5, black could try a6, getting their own counter attack on the queen side, but after e takes f5, a takes b5, knight to e4 comes again, so these knights are very strong on e4. Queen a6, threatening to take on the a2 pawn. After a3, rook takes f5 and queen c2. White stands a bit better because the knight's going to capture on c5, and also white's got some tactics here, attacking the bishop. This pawn's pinned against this queen, and perhaps these two g and h pawns could roll the board. So I don't think taking this knight is very good, and Leela thought so too, so she played queen to b6 here. Here Houdini played queen c2, and Leela gets her final piece into the game, rook a e8. So that's quite impressive. So she's just developed all the pieces simply. Black's given up a pawn for development, and we're in for a good game now. Rook df1 from Houdini, and instead of capturing here, Leela now plays f4, undermining this g pawn and preparing to play f3. So white's pretty much just got to take that pawn off, and if the rook takes f4, Houdini plays knight to h1, trying to swap rooks off, and Leela obliges. Rook takes f1, rook takes f1, and plays bishop to h3 here, attacking the rook because Leela wants the f-file all to herself. Rook d1 is played, perhaps threatening to play d6. So Leela now plays a6, kicking that knight away, and it goes back to c3, so d6 is no longer a big threat now. And Leela now finally grabs the open f-file. Because d6 doesn't work, white now puts their rook back on the g-file, and Leela now manoeuvres their piece, the big queen, into the game, queen to f6, attacking this h4 pawn. So what happens if white just pushes his pawn up to move it out of the way? Well, now just comes knight to f3, threatening rook, and also playing knight d4. So after captures and captures, black's got all their big artillery into the game, and even though they're a pawn down, Leela's got some good compensation here. I mean, look at that knight on h1, it's not really doing much. With queen e2, queen f4, queen c2, and just bishop d4, and black's actually clearly better here, given by Stockfish. I think mainly due to these two bishops just powering over many squares. In the game though, Houdini did not push this pawn. Houdini played knight to g3, moving the knight away from that terrible square. But this allows Leela to come in now. She plays queen to f2, attacking the rook. Houdini defends with queen to c1. And now Leela crashes in with knight to f3, attacking the rook, and forces Houdini to capture the knight. After rook takes, the queen and the rook attack the g3 knight. So now knight g e2 is played. Perhaps knight to f5 here was an option, but after bishop takes the knight, pawn captures and the rook captures, Leela's got the pawn back, and her pieces are in much better positions and quite active. With queen e1, queen d4, maybe queen g3, and rook f8. The game is still very even, but black is ever so slightly better here, possibly due to the bishop and the more active queen. But anyway, after rook takes f3, knight g e2 is played, and what that does is protect the knight and also threatens queen to g5, where white's going to launch an attack on the g-file. And for this reason, Leela just simply plays h6 here. So that's quite a very fine move. Houdini tries to swap queens off. And I like Leela's next move, it's very interesting. She plays bishop to f1 here. So it cuts the rook away from the queen, and also that bishop on g7 is threatening to hit the knight on c3. And there's definitely some tactics here. And for this reason, Houdini just simplifies, queen takes f2, rook takes f2, and knight to d1, attacking the rook. So obviously if rook takes e2 here, white will just capture on f1 and gain equality. So for this reason, Leela just plays rook to f3, keeping hold of the two bishops. Houdini plays knight back to c3, and actually this gives the opportunity for Leela to play b5 now. So this knight on c3 is just too overwhelmed. It's protecting the knight on e2, and it can't attack on b5 at the same time. So after captures, yeah, if knight takes b5, just bishop takes e2. So knight c1 is played by Houdini, and just b4 now from Leela, attacking the knight, and it gets kicked away to knight d1. So all of white's pieces are now on the back rank, and these two bishops are just overpowering these two knights at the moment. Bishop b5 now, and Leela's just now putting both her bishops on great squares. Rook e1 here, and Leela goes after the pawn. Rook to h3, threatening to take on h4. Perhaps e5 now should be played by white, but after rook takes h4, Knight to b3 attacking c5, maybe c4, knight c5. Leela can play bishop to e8. After knight to a6, just bishop g6 and king a1. And here Leela can now afford to swap rooks off with rook to e4. After captures, e6, king g8 actually just comes right on time. And if a move like knight takes b4, Leela can just start launching her h-pawn up the board, and it's good night from white's perspective. So after rook h3, knight b3 is played by Houdini, c4 is played similar to that position, and knight c5 now. But now comes bishop to e5, stopping Houdini from pushing this e-pawn. Here Houdini played a4, attacking the bishop, forcing a capture on a3, b takes a3, and Leela decides to recapture the pawn. So now both sides have 3 pawns each, but Leela has the 2 bishops versus the 2 knights. And you'll see this endgame that the 2 bishops are just far superior here. After knight b2, rook h3, just trying to pick up this other pawn. Rook c1, trying to also attack a pawn at the same time. But bishop d6 now from Leela, attacking the knight. The knight goes from b2 to a4, and just rook takes h4, and Leela's now actually a pawn up, with this h-pawn ready to roll up the board. Knight c3 now from white, and just bishop to e8, manoeuvring the bishop maybe to g6 at some point, and just keeping it out of harm's way. Knight to a4, and just captures on a4, captures on a4, and Houdini's just given back another pawn. Rook takes e4. Leela is now 2 pawns up. After knight c3, rook d4, rook takes d5 is threatened if that knight ever moves, which it does after knight to b5, and it seems as though Houdini has just given up here. After rook takes d5, Houdini captures on d6, c takes d6, and rook takes c4, and here Houdini resigned because it's black's got a superior position, and Leela's just going to steamroll the rest of the game. So this thought this was a demonstration of how powerful these 2 bishops are. In this position, white is actually a pawn up, but Leela now just manages to totally outmaneuver white. So we'll just see again, knight ge2, h6, queen e1, and after the queens get swapped off, white's forced into these terrible moves. Rook f3 again, and knight d c3, and here I think this was the winning move really. b5, after captures knight c1, white's forced play very passively and just get their knights into terrible squares. And here Leela just starts cleaning up. These 2 bishops are too powerful and starts picking up all these pawns. So maybe this is just testament that the 2 bishops are in fact a lot stronger than the 2 knights. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this game. Please drop a like if you did, and subscribe if you want to watch more chess videos in the future. It really does help the channel to grow, and I'll be with you with more chess videos very soon. Thank you.